that retro and that retro feel and the environment is all supposed to feel familiar, but at the same time it's kind of not real. There are two films playing inside. The first one that you see is a film with people talking about a friend, an artist who got sick and died, so it's quite a sad documentary. And on the other side, there's another television, and that television plays a parody of the television show American Idol, but instead of judging singers, the judges are judging contemporary artists. But of course, they're not the real artists, they're actors. And in our tragic film, they're talking about the death of an artist, but actually it's all made up. No artist died, it was a lie. So again, it's just another level of what's real and what's not in the exhibition, or in that part of the exhibition, this rest point that should be quite relaxing, but it's actually quite unnerving, and there's a real duality to it. Now we've arrived at one of the later stages of the show. So having taken our little rest, we're ready for the final battle. And that's what you see around us, a few things that all make up that final battle. The first thing above us are these spaceships that are all racing towards a huge pile of dust. You know, civilization inevitably crashing to the ground and turning into rubble. Behind that are a series of televisions that show our monsters, our heroes and villains floating in space in possibly violent movement, all in slow motion, so that violence becomes quite beautiful. And moving on from that, what you see behind us is a skateboard ramp. It's with a mirrored surface. Now, the skateboard ramp represents a literal, dynamic, risky space. So people can actually come here and skate this thing whenever they like and potentially break their neck. So all these things together, the spaceships, the large pile, the warriors floating in space, and skaters experience actual risk. All this activity represents sort of a final battle, this final action moment of the adventure. A few things happen after the battle. The first thing is we, as the hero, the survivor of the battle, we achieve another level of consciousness or being, or whatever you want to call it, and we represent that with this piece of art behind me, which is a hologram. I mean, it's a genuine hologram. It's a very advanced technology. It involves projectors and mirrors and screens that you can't see, but the result, as you can see, is quite startling. I mean, it looks like this weird being is actually standing there, but it's not real at all. So it represents in some ways a Superman, the being that you become after you've been through this bizarre adventure. Now, another thing that we see in this area is the film behind us. Now, this is a film that is basically a light moment in the exhibition in some regards, but it is a film that was made using an Xbox 360, and using a game called Halo 3. We basically hijacked the technology and found a way to actually make our own film within the Xbox. It is a common thing in video gaming. It has a name. People call this style of movie making machinima. So we basically adopted that machinima style, and we did a lot of research online how to do it, and we played the game, and we made our own movie. And in our movie, these soldiers basically lost because they can't find the battle. They finish their battle, they go back to base, there's no one around, there's no battle going on anymore, and they're a loose end. So they wander around the environment trying to find their comrades or try and find the next fight. But they can't. What they find instead is art. They find these huge sculptural works. So we basically rebuilt famous, iconic 20th century pieces of art in the video game. And the soldiers come across these pieces of work, and inevitably they try to destroy them. Okay, so now we've seen the conclusion of the final battle. So we saw the soldiers who were lost in the woods and finding these large pieces of work that they tried to destroy, and we saw our super being. So once that's all over and done with, what is left? Well, what is left is represented by the next piece of work, which is a film of two trapeze artists flipping around in the darkness, and we recorded that in the UK. And the male and the female artists clinging to one another and saving one another again and again represents love and faith and trust. So it's the real reward from any adventure is love. Very simple. Okay, so this trapeze artist film, this was all filmed on a Red in Bristol in UK. The music that you're hearing is by a UK pop artist called James Lavelle, who has a band called Uncle. James and I have been friends for many, many years, so he actually contributed quite a lot of music to the show. He did half the pieces, and the other half were done by a New York artist called Gary Gunn. So we were very fortunate to have all this amazing music throughout the exhibition. Okay, and of course, other than love, the sort of untouchable reward, there is always a physical reward in things, it seems, and we represent that here with this huge meteor of trophies. It's a 4-meter diameter ball covered in 1,000 trophies, and every trophy has a plaque on it, and each plaque has an engraving. The engravings are either the name of a piece of art that I've produced in my lifetime or a name of someone that I love. So my whole life is kind of represented on this huge ball of cheap China-made steel. So the ball, of course, is relatively worthless, but the sentiment in the words is extremely valuable to me. And below us on the floor, there is a metal frame that goes around the base of the ball, and it says, "All my possessions for a moment of time." And these were apparently the last words of Queen Elizabeth I before she died. The only thing left is the conclusion. I mean, the end of the story, and that's represented by these white pods that are the opposite of the black pods being the first thing that you saw when you came in. The film, not surprisingly, plays hundreds of clips from 100 films, but the last few seconds of those films all strung together. And of course, we notice many similarities in those endings. We see many, many sunsets and many people walking off into the distance or closing their eyes. So these are the 100 endings from the 100 possible journeys that you took in the exhibition. These are the 100 possible conclusions. So the very final thing you see when you leave Hope and Glory is a film of a girl. The girl is the same girl that you saw jumping off a building earlier on in the exhibition. We see the conclusion. What happens to her is she lands on the street and she bends her legs and springs up and flies off into the air. So instead of dying, as you would expect, she makes it. And she flies, as we do, on to the next adventure. And so Hope and Glory begins again and goes around and around in circles, just as life does, just as humanity does. On to the next adventure. The show was extremely expensive. It's worth about $15 million. But most of that was sponsored, and we got favors from people and got deals here and there, and eventually we cut it down to a total budget of about $4 million. And the government chipped in a little bit of that, less than half, and we, the people, myself and my friends, sort of funded the rest. Been quite a triumph over adversity, and hopefully it has positive repercussions for Hong Kong's sort of art and cultural community in the future. Time will tell, I suppose. But it's on until the end of May. It's free, anyone can come here. It's open every day. I encourage you all to do so, and more than that, I encourage you to bring other people and other people and other people, because if the show is successful, if many people come to the show, then it opens the door for many more exhibitions like this in the future, and Hong Kong definitely needs more art. So thank you for listening. I'm Simon Birch, and that was Hope and Glory.